welcome back to our live coverage here at AWS reInvent 2023.
Is
that the
2023
year?
already?
You know, every time I say it out loud.
It's almost 2024, so
I know,
don't get used to it.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. I finally got used to it and about to change. I'm Am Grabelny. I'm one of your hosts here, a developer advocate at AWS. I just made two friends named Scott.
Yeah,
Scott.
we like to make it easy here.
I appreciate that.
Scott, all the people at PwC are named Scott.
Oh, everyone! Wow. So if I join, then I become Scott?
You have to change your name.
I'm more than willing. All right, let's do intros real quick. First, Scott, please.
Scott Petrie. I lead the engineering practice at PwC in the United States. So happy to be here.
Yeah.
Good to see you. Other Scott?
Scott Weber, one of our leads in our AWS practice at PwC, also one of our AWS ambassadors that we have on staff.
Oh, I'm also a member of the partner network, so I love our ambassadors. We've got a lot of great AWS ambassadors. Very cool to hear.
Yeah.
All right, so let's kick it off. PwC, if anybody hasn't heard of it, what should they know about PwC?
Well, most people who have heard of PwC would think accounting or business strategy and helping our clients improve their businesses, and that is definitely the background and the brand that we have. But we want to talk a little bit today about the new PwC as we move into the digital world with everyone else, and we're talking here today about our cloud engineering practice, our capabilities with AWS, and the partnership that we have here, and trying to make sure everybody knows that we're in this game as big as we ever were in the accounting and the other things they've heard of us for.
I love it. Yeah, you put a lot of resources into building this cloud engineering capability. Do you want to tell a little bit about that history? What's gone into that? Yeah,
over the last several years, we've been on a journey to do more of the execution work for our clients as we talk to them about their strategies, we give them advice on what they should be doing. So the last several years, we've been very focused on helping them execute on those strategies. And obviously today, that's largely cloud engineering related type work. There's always technology behind whatever our clients are needing to do with their businesses. So we bring our very strong sector-oriented lens, like we really understand their business, we understand how the business works, we also understand how the business needs to change.
Yes.
And we bring that knowledge coupled with deep engineering skills, deep technology talent. A lot of people like Scott over here that are closely embedded with clouds like AWS, being an ambassador, being deep in the technology. How do we best leverage that to create the best business outcomes for our clients? So over the last couple of years, we've made a couple of acquisitions. We've built out a team. We've brought it together into an engineering format. We've built an engineering culture behind our team globally. So much like many of the other firms out there, we've grown over the last few years. But we're here for real.
You've mentioned a lot of things I wanna dive into here. I think engineering culture is pivotal to anything, not even just cloud related, but anything that you want to do with a technology-based company.
Absolutely.
So I want to talk more about how y'all have set that tone with your engineering culture. But also, I think so. I want to remind everybody we are live. I've got chat pulled up. I'm taking your questions here as well. I think chat would be, because we got a lot of people who are joining us, interested about AWS, maybe don't know where to get started with AWS, don't know where to get started in cloud, are trying to make sense of all the things that are happening. You mentioned change, which is the only constant in life, as we know. We've had a lot of changes this year already with, I'll say the buzzword, generative AI, right? Yeah, that's been very impactful. But let's take it back, and because y'all clearly have a deep history with this, how do you handle change? How do you handle keeping up with all the things that are going on as you're building out this cloud engineering capability?
You want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I mean, as you said, change is the only constant. What I find interesting about what we did around our cloud engineering journey at PwC, it's analogous to the journey that we're having to help our customers on. So we had to go through a little bit of a business transformation of how do we go from just being a strategic advisor to being the company that's also the strategic advisor, plus can bring those build skills in to do whatever that customer needs to change their business, right? So you have to you have to embrace that, right, to continue to grow as a firm and as a business. And we bring that idea then to our customers, helping them understand how are they going to have to change as new technology is coming out, whether it's, is something is just as general as cloud or Gen AI or whatever the case may be. We have to help them on that journey as they continue. What does it mean to change how their business is going to operate? How are their people going to, need to be reskilled? And how do they change processes to respond faster? Because one of the things that you enable with a cloud journey and bringing engineering to the table is we're helping a lot of customers be able to move and execute faster, right? So that engineering culture comes in of releasing all the time, releasing faster, and it's helping show the businesses what it actually means to become more engineering focused and drive change and what it can mean to the bottom line of the business.
Yeah, I don't know if you've experienced this at PwC. For me personally, I've got a developer background. I've spent a lot of my career coding, but the longer you stay in tech, the more you find out I've got to keep my skills up to date. But I've always found that if I could find like a fulcrum of something that I understand, I could pivot off of that, right? Because it comes across, right? In tech, things change, but they actually don't change that deeply. You can usually find something similar to what you've experienced in the past in all of these new things, right?
Yep.
Does that come into play when you're reskilling people or talking with companies about how they need to reskill? Have you done anything around that?
I think this is a really great point that I really try to emphasize in our engineering culture as well. Engineers have this sort of natural, innate desire to take on the next new thing. And they find the next little thing easy to learn, right? So it's like, okay, so somebody said prompt engineering is the cool thing to do. Of course, it's not really coding, but it is, and writing an algorithm sort of and talking to the bot, right? So figuring out how to do that. Of course, every engineer wants to do that. So everybody's going to go invest in a good engineering culture. Everybody's going to go invest in their learning and continuously improve. And so you try to embed that into the story, right? Try to make sure that we're always leading people towards the opportunities to learn, the opportunities to grow, the opportunities to do things that are different than what they did yesterday. It's one of the interesting things about consulting or professional services business is the opportunity to work on many different things. And I think sometimes in our business, we tend to over-specialize the ask. Like, I want somebody who's got 5 years of experience on EKS exactly.
Right.
It's like, why?
Right.
No, I want somebody who knows generally how containers work.
Yes.
Right? I want somebody who generally understands how scaling works. Right? I want somebody who generally understands the cloud, and then I want them to be able to apply that to many different scenarios. So we try to build in our teams that culture of continuous learning, the continuous opportunity to try the next new thing, and make sure that the younger people are growing their career in a way that they have some mentorship, they have some growth, but they have some breadth and depth to go with it.
Yeah, I've seen job postings that ask for more years of experience than the technology has existed, right?
That's always a fun one.
Yeah. So I think that's highly important. That's a great point. Let's talk about that engineering culture. What's some of the key tenets that y'all look at when we're building that out?
So we always have to start, because of our background as PwC, we always have to start as it's business-led, right? There's a reason why we're doing the work we're doing, right? Whatever the tech work is, has some outcome that it's supposed to achieve, to pursue, and our teams need to know that, right? They need to be invested in what they're doing, so that outcome focus is a big deal.
We can, as engineers, kind of nerd out on stuff without the end game in sight sometimes. I've been guilty of that personally.
We all have done it, but that's not really our purpose, right? So
we're driving outcomes.
There's an outcome. There's always going to be data, right? There's always going to be either analytics informing the decisions we're making or other data that's part of the system that we're building, whether it's doing personalization, whatever other kind of use of data that might be part of what we're doing. But there's always going to be data. There's always going to be outcomes. And there's always going to be, and I think this one's really important, we were just talking about, is always going to be learning, right? So people always have to be growing and progressing as engineers. And at a conference like this, there's a room full of brilliant ideas out here that people can walk around and go, hey, I never thought of that before. Let me try this. Let me learn that. Let me see what these guys are doing. Let me play this game back here, the booth right behind us where they're playing some crazy game.
Oh, yeah. This is the Launch Darkly booth. I work with them a lot. I'm on a team that specializes in gamified learning. We're called the AWS Game Day team.
Nice, yeah.
And we take the same approach where, you can go through a workshop, you can, read a blog, you can get into the docs, but you really, really learn something when you get into an ambiguous situation without clear directions, and you have to get interactive and solve it somehow, right? So that's what we try and build in a safe environment, right? Because doing this in prod is probably not something you want to do, right?
No.
Right.
No, maybe next year.
Yeah, that's right. Once you understand it, then yeah. And so this is the safe space in Game Day. What types of things are your engineering teams doing to keep up to date and learning?
So it's obviously certifications, right? But it's also learning to leverage your more senior people, right? So that senior people are tutoring and mentoring the kids that just came out of college, right? It's always like it's challenging yourself to write better. I'm not allowed to touch code anymore, but it was always like if I looked at code that I wrote 6 months ago and I can't see a way that I could write it better, right, you're not doing your job as an engineer, right? You're not constantly learning. So it's challenging them to think of things differently and to be more efficient and to stay up to date with what's going on with somebody like AWS at the rapid rate of change. So you have to give the engineers space to experiment too with the latest and greatest, and have that ability to fail fast and try and see how they can eke out more performance, or they can look at doing something slightly differently in an architecture. So you talked about that safe spot. You have to give them some safety nets to like go and experiment, but have those guardrails that they don't get too far out of where they should be.
I love that. I mean, I think it's a really challenging aspect of anyone's career to really start figuring out when you take a step back and you start multiplying yourself by mentoring others, right? And it becomes less and less about, okay, what do I know? What am I driving? What code have I written? How many lines did I get in today? And more about how many people have I mentored? How many people have I done code reviews for? How many people, and taking that step back and realizing, hey, I'm at that point. Like, I actually should be doing this. That's weird, right? Like, I think it's kind of a strange transition that until you experience it, you may not be able to understand.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we did in putting our engineering culture in place, and Scott really led this, is this idea of giving our people the ability at a certain level to now start to specialize. Right. So somebody can become, a specialist on AWS, or they could go even deeper and say like, well, I want to be a specialist on AWS machine learning or AWS containers. And you have to give engineers that ability, because so you will always have some engineers that are like, no, I just want to stay broad. That's okay. But you're also going to have those engineers that are like, I want to go completely understand this one space.
I love it. I love cryptography. I want to just do security and cryptography.
But you need that mixture in a culture, so that you have the generalists that are out there, and they're just leading the teams. They might be leading the teams to generate the code to solve the problem for the business. But you need those subject matter experts to layer back in when you get into that really esoteric corner case thing that's just got to be right. We work with a lot of customers, really big customers, where high throughput systems are absolutely critical, and being held to like sub-second SLAs on things, right? So it's like that's where that's when you bring in those experts are like, how are we really going to do this, right?
Yeah, how do we squeeze that last bit of latency out, right? How do we get that last bit of performance out? Yeah.
So from a culture, you have to enable the people that want to go become specialists to have that ability to do that.
I think it's important that there's different dimensions of that specialization as well, right? There's it's very natural in the engineering space to talk about, I want to be highly specialized in a certain technology or a certain
I think a lot of people
nerdy
view that
area.
as a path to accelerating their career in some ways
Yeah.
too. I think some people view that as like, well, that's the only way I'm going to move up, right, in
Yeah.
the world, which is not necessarily true.
I think there's a couple of different paths, right? And I
Yes.
do think it's also important, especially in our business, that we have people who specialize in industry problems,
Right.
right? So like an engineer who wants to be all about healthcare,
Yes.
right? All about healthcare data.
Right.
Now you get into a very special space with personal health data,
Right.
and
The compliance needs for healthcare.
how do you manage the
very
situation? If you think about healthcare, it's historically underinvested in technology, and therefore they have a lot of technical debt. When we start talking about doing cloud work for a healthcare provider, we're talking about like fixing up their IT shop, fixing up their infrastructure, fixing up their security, so that they can be in the cloud, right? So now somebody's getting really specialized in the healthcare data problem as an engineer. So we have people specializing on the industry dimension, we have people specializing on the technology dimension, and we have people who aren't specializing, but are learning to lead engineering teams at scale,
I
right?
love that.
And so how do you run a large-scale engineering team, that's hundreds of people doing some kind of massive project for a bank,
Yeah.
right? Like, you need somebody who knows how to run that, right? Somebody who knows how to lead that engagement.
I feel like this is the secret you learn the longer you're in tech too, is that, knowing the tech, like being able to be proficient in coding, these are all very important things. But there's an entirely other people side to tech, right?
Yep.
Like a lot of these problems aren't tech problems, and they're people problems. And you still, to lead someone through a transformational change like this, have to address the people. Even though you are the tech provider, you still need to help address that people issue. Speaking of people watching who may be considering coming and working for PwC, any engineers out there in chat, I want to ask on their behalf, what are y'all building? What are some examples of things that they would get to work on if they considered a career at PwC?
Without giving away any secrets.
Oh, perfect, perfect. That we don't want to give away secrets.
So it's, it's interesting, like in the professional services world, in a consulting business, right? We build a lot of accelerators to make ourselves better for our clients, right? How can we how can we solve the problem faster? How can we get to the outcome faster? So we're building tons of integrated, predefined cloud solutions for different industries and different specializations that are opportunities to accelerate the work that we do with our clients. Those throw off a whole bunch of component assets that we can use anytime, right? So we have a giant library of open source within our firm code that we have to deliver. Those things, because of our brand and who we are, have to be security first, data first, like optimized, ready to reuse across industries. Like, we've covered all the basis on that.
Right.
So we have teams building a lot of these assets for our reuse. And then, of course, we have teams doing loads of client work, right? So we're doing a lot of, we would call it modernization, because we don't let our clients just migrate to the cloud. We make sure they modernize on the way so that they get the cost benefits that they should get, they get the optimizations they should get, they get the performance they should get. So we're doing a lot of modernization on the way to the cloud with our clients right now. We feel like a lot of people, a lot of companies took the first wave in maybe a bad path and sort of just jumped into the cloud without realizing what they needed to do and not taking on the full change management that you were just talking about. Like, you have to actually go change stuff. It doesn't get cheaper by moving to the cloud. It gets cheaper by changing the way you use the cloud, right? Changing the way you use the technology. So we're doing a lot of that kind of work. Sometimes that involves net new, like building some application from the ground up. But a lot of times it's like, hey, they've got a mainframe that already does something. It kind of has a business process represented. It has some data there. How do we move that to the cloud and modernize the whole ecosystem? So a lot of our client work is in that space where we're helping our clients improve the way their business functions, changing the way their teams work, their own people work, changing their business processes. And I think, like, when we talk about generative AI work, for example, I think it's funny because it's a big race to see what people can experiment with.
Right.
But it doesn't do anything unless you change a business process, right? It doesn't create any value. It just creates cost unless you change a business process. So that's our story, is like we're gonna go out there and help change the world through our clients, and that's what our engineers get to work on.
since you brought it up this time, generative AI, I'll ask you both. We got about 30 seconds left. What have you seen at reInvent so far that you're excited about with PwC that you want to get back and start looking into?
I mean, we were watching Adam this morning, and it's, I'm excited about the announcements, the progression in technology. We were having a nerdy conversation over there about exponential change and how fast, like, it didn't exist, then it existed, and now it's suddenly everything.
Now everybody can get to it, yeah.
Right, but I do appreciate the responsibility, security, data privacy parts of it. Those are big deals. That's really important in business. So.
Yes.
I want to get hands-on with Q and just see how far you can really take that. Some things he was talking about, like, I think about 5-10 years, like if you had Q to troubleshoot what was going on, right? I think that changes. That's an accelerator right there.
We just saw it. We just watched a demo in Code Catalyst where Doug was opening issues and assigning it to Q, and Q just would go out and do what you told it to, basically, write the code for you. It was impressive.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, thank you both.
Thank you.
Scott and Scott.
I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate y'all joining us and letting us hear about what y'all are up to at PwC.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Yep.
For the rest of you, stay tuned because we will be back with more in just a moment.